Millionaire overhears cleaner crying in his daughter's room, and he was shocked by what he sees. Alexander Grant had always believed that his wealth could shield his family from pain. Mansions, private doctors, endless resources. He thought these would ensure his only daughter, Sophia, never faced suffering. But in one breathless night, that illusion shattered. The grand hallways of his estate were silent except for the faint tick of a distant clock. Alexander was returning late, his tie loosened, his briefcase heavy with contracts. He moved toward his daughter's room, intending only to check if she was asleep, but the moment he stepped inside, his heart stopped. Sophia lay motionless on the bed, her tiny chest rising so weakly it seemed like every breath might be her last. Standing over her was Clara Evans, the maid who had been with them for years, clutching a small bottle of pills in trembling hands. Tears streamed down her face, and her body shook as if caught in a storm. "What the hell are you doing to my child?" Alexander's voice thundered through the room, sharp and fierce like glass shattering. Clara spun around, startled, her dark eyes wide with panic. "No, please, it's not what you think," she cried, her voice breaking. But to Alexander, it looked exactly like the nightmare he feared most. His daughter's fragile body pale and weak, and his maid holding medicine she had no right to touch. Rage surged inside him. In 2 strides he reached Clara and seized her wrist so tightly the bottle nearly slipped from her hand. "Answer me now," he demanded, his tone shaking with fury. "What were you about to give her?" Clara stammered, her lips trembling. I swear, I wasn't trying to hurt her. Please, sir, listen." "Listen," his roar echoed. "You're standing here weeping over my daughter's bed with drugs in your hand. Do you expect me to believe you weren't about to poison her?" Her face crumpled with despair. She lowered her gaze, her voice cracking like a child's. "Poison her? No, sir. God knows I would never. I was only trying to help. Sophia, she hasn't been well. She's been coughing, wheezing. She struggles to breathe at night. I couldn't just stand by." Alexander glanced at Sophia. Her damp curls clung to her flushed cheeks, and her tiny breaths rattled softly. She did look weaker than usual, but the sight of Clara holding medicine twisted his stomach. "Why didn't you come to me? Why didn't you call a doctor?" His words cut like steel. "I tried," Clara whispered. Her fingers tightened around the bottle as if it were her lifeline. "But you were always gone. Meetings, dinners, phone calls, you were never here. And when you were, you didn't notice. You didn't hear her cries." The words pierced deeper than she knew. Alexander's first instinct was to lash back, but truth silenced him. Clara's tears streamed harder as she whispered, "I couldn't let another child slip away. Not again." Alexander's grip loosened, confusion flashing in his eyes. "What do you mean? Another child?" Clara raised her tear-streaked face, her voice barely holding together. "My own little girl. She was only 5, the same age Sophia is now. She caught pneumonia, and we didn't have money for proper care. I watched her fade away in my arms. Do you know what it does to a mother to bury a child who still needed lullabies?" Her words struck Alexander's chest like a hammer. He froze, staring not at an employee anymore, but at a grieving mother who carried unbearable loss. Alexander's hand slowly released Clara's wrist. The anger that had burned so fiercely inside him cooled into something heavier: fear, guilt, and dread. He took a step back, watching her shoulders shake as she clutched the medicine. "I swore that day," Clara whispered, her voice breaking, "that I would never let another child slip away if I could help it. When Sophia started coughing, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't breathe without hearing my baby's last gasp echoing in my ears. So yes, I held the medicine. Yes, I cried. But only because I am terrified of losing her the way I lost mine." The room fell silent. The only sound was Sophia's shallow, uneven breathing, each rise and fall of her chest a reminder of how fragile she was. Alexander stared at Clara. The bottle in her hands no longer seemed dangerous. It looked like desperation carved into glass. His pride, however, refused to surrender so easily. His jaw tightened as he muttered, "You should have told me." "I did," Clara said quickly, shaking her head. "I left notes on your desk. I told the head housekeeper. I begged the driver to remind you, but nothing reached you. You're too far away, sir, too high above us to hear." Alexander's face flushed with shame, though he masked it with a stern glare. "And what if you were wrong? What if giving her medicine without a doctor's order harmed her?" Clara's lips quivered. "I didn't give her anything. I couldn't. I only held it because I wanted to be ready, because I was afraid." She took a shaky breath. "Do you understand what it feels like to watch a child's chest rise so faintly that you wonder if you'll lose her before morning?" Her words cut deeper than he wanted to admit. He turned his eyes toward Sophia, who stirred weakly, her fragile hand twitching against the blanket. Alexander's throat tightened. "And I wasn't here," he whispered, his voice barely audible. Clara's gaze softened. "No, sir, you weren't." The honesty stung more than any insult could. Alexander felt the crushing weight of his choices: boardrooms, business dinners, late flights, all the things that built his empire but stole him from his daughter's side. Clara's tears continued to fall, yet her presence was steady. She sat down beside Sophia, brushing her small hand with gentle fingers. "I would never harm her," she murmured. "I love her as if she were my own." Alexander's chest constricted. His throat closed as if unseen hands gripped it. He wanted to argue, to deny, but the truth pressed too heavily. Clara, a maid, had been more present for his daughter than he, her own father. Sophia whimpered in her sleep. Both adults froze. Clara leaned forward, whispering softly, "Shh, little one. You're safe, I promise." Alexander remained at the doorway, watching with a sinking heart. The words Clara spoke should have been his own, yet they came from the woman he had almost accused of betrayal. For the first time in years, Alexander Grant felt something unfamiliar coursing through him: helplessness. Pride could not shield Sophia, wealth could not heal her, and the realization gnawed at him. If Clara hadn't been there tonight, what might he have already lost? Alexander's hands, which had been rigid at his sides, slowly curled into fists. He felt the raw edges of his own failure cutting into him, sharper than any accusation or insult could. He swallowed hard, attempting to summon words that could bridge the chasm between his pride and the truth he could no longer deny. I should have been here," he finally admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Every night, every cough, every fever. I should have been here. Not just for her, but for you too." The confession left a hollow ache in his chest. He had lived in towers of power, surrounded by wealth and accolades, yet none of it mattered tonight. None of it could protect Sophia or heal the panic etched into Clara's face. Clara didn't look up immediately. She remained focused on Sophia, her fingers lightly brushing the child's hair back from her forehead. "I never asked for your praise, sir," she said softly, almost to herself. "I only wanted to keep her alive, to give her a chance, and I did what any mother, or anyone who loves a child, would do." Her words were firm, yet threaded with exhaustion, a gentle steel forged from sleepless nights and constant fear. Alexander stepped closer, the floorboards creaking under his weight. He could see the tension in Clara's shoulders, the way her hands trembled as they hovered protectively over Sophia. For so long, he had equated responsibility with control, believing that to delegate was to absolve himself. Yet here, in this quiet, dimly lit nursery, he realized that responsibility was not measured in power or authority. It was measured in presence. "Clara," he said, his voice tighter now, choked with emotion he had spent years burying. I've been a fool. I thought protecting her meant managing her from afar, controlling every detail. But I see now, I've been absent from the things that matter most." He swallowed, closing the distance between them. "I've been absent from her life." Clara finally met his gaze. Her eyes were glossy with unshed tears, but there was no anger, only a wary softness, a cautious trust. "It's not too late, sir," she whispered. "She still needs you. But if you continue to be absent, if you leave her again, I don't know who else could stand between her and harm." Her words struck him harder than any rebuke. Alexander felt a weight settle on his shoulders, heavier than the finest suits he owned, heavier than the decisions that had shaped his empire. This weight was real, immediate, irreplaceable, and for the first time he realized that power meant nothing if it didn't protect what was truly precious. Sophia shifted in her sleep, her tiny lips forming a faint, almost imperceptible smile. Alexander's heart ached, each beat a reminder of the fragility of life and love. He reached down slowly, placing a trembling hand over hers. For a moment, the world outside, the deals, the fame, the endless pursuit of more, vanished. There was only this room, this child, this woman who had carried the weight of his neglect. "I don't know how to fix the past," he admitted, voice low. "But I want to be here, truly here, for both of you." Clara's shoulders eased slightly. She allowed a faint, weary smile to touch her lips, the first sign of relief since the night had begun. "Actions speak louder than words, sir. Show her. Show her you're here, not just in presence, but in heart." Alexander nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. He glanced at Sophia, whose chest rose and fell with fragile rhythm, and then back at Clara, who had become his daughter's shield when he had failed to be one. And in that quiet nursery, the empire, the wealth, the pride, all of it, faded into insignificance. What mattered now was far simpler, far more urgent: love, presence, and the courage to finally stand where he belonged. The next morning, sunlight filtered softly through the nursery curtains, painting golden stripes across the floor. Sophia stirred awake, her small eyes blinking against the light. Alexander, who had stayed beside her through the night, felt a quiet awe settle over him. He had watched her breathe, listened to the faint rhythm of her heartbeat, and felt the fragile pulse of life in a way that no boardroom victory or business deal had ever given him. Clara entered quietly, carrying a tray of warm tea. She froze for a moment when she saw Alexander sitting on the edge of the crib, his hand gently resting over Sophia's tiny fingers. He looked up, eyes tired but present, and nodded in greeting. "Good morning," he said softly. It was the first time he had spoken to her like this, not as an employer, not as a distant authority, but as someone sharing in the responsibility, in the care. Clara set the tray down and exhaled slowly. "You didn't leave," she said, a statement more than a question. She studied him closely, searching for any sign that he might retreat into his old habits, into his walls of pride, but Alexander only shook his head. "No," he admitted. "Not today. Not ever again if I can help it." Sophia let out a weak giggle as Alexander picked her up carefully, holding her against his chest. She smelled faintly of baby powder and warmth, her tiny hands clutching at his shirt. He felt an unfamiliar tenderness rise in his chest, a protective instinct that demanded action, presence, and sacrifice. For the first time, he understood that power was not about commanding others. It was about being needed and responding without hesitation. Clara watched them, her eyes softening. "She needs you," she said quietly, more to herself than to him. "Not just to provide, but to love, to show her that she is safe no matter what." Alexander nodded, feeling the weight of those words settle on him. "I know," he said, "and I will not fail her again." He looked down at Sophia, who had begun to snuggle into his chest. "You're my daughter, and I've been blind. But I see now. I will not miss another moment of your life." Clara approached cautiously. "It will take time," she reminded him. "You can't undo the past in a day. But presence, honesty, and care, they matter more than anything else." Her voice was gentle but firm, the tone of someone who had fought long and hard to keep what she loved alive. Alexander set Sophia back into her crib, brushing her hair gently. "Then I will spend every day proving it," he said, meeting Clara's gaze. There was no arrogance in his tone, only sincerity and a quiet resolve. For the first time, he felt the fragile hope of a father ready to learn, ready to participate, ready to make amends. Clara allowed a small smile to touch her lips. "Then start with today," she said simply. "Be here, not just in body, but in mind and heart. She will feel it, and so will I." The three of them stood together in the quiet nursery, sunlight warming their faces, the soft sounds of Sophia's breathing filling the room. It was a small, fragile beginning, but it was real. And for Alexander Grant, that truth, presence over pride, love over ambition, was the most valuable thing he had ever known. Days turned into a week, and Alexander's presence in the nursery became a constant. He no longer came only in passing or for brief check-ins. He stayed through feedings, lullabies, and the quiet moments between Sophia's soft breaths. Each night, he sat by her crib, tracing tiny patterns on her blanket with a trembling finger, learning the subtle shifts of her moods, the faint sounds that told him she was uncomfortable, hungry, or simply seeking comfort. Clara observed him silently, sometimes from across the room, sometimes just outside the doorway. She noticed the small ways he adjusted to Sophia's world, how he learned to lift her carefully, to soothe her when she cried, to anticipate her needs without prompting. Each gesture was awkward at first, uncertain, but growing more natural with each passing day. Alexander's pride had not vanished entirely, but it had been reshaped, tempered into patience, humility, and care. One evening, Clara entered to find Alexander gently rocking Sophia in his arms. The nursery was quiet, except for her soft breathing and the faint creak of the rocking chair. He looked up, surprised to see her standing there. "She's peaceful," he said, almost in wonder. "I never thought such stillness could feel so heavy, so alive, all at once." Clara nodded, moving closer. "It's because she feels safe. She feels your presence. You're here, truly here, and that changes everything for a child." Her voice carried a mix of approval and cautious optimism, the acknowledgement of a trust slowly rebuilt. Alexander's gaze fell to Sophia, whose eyelids fluttered as she drifted towards sleep. I wish I could have been here sooner," he admitted, voice thick with emotion. "Not just for her, but for you too. I failed both of you for so long." Clara's eyes softened, and for the first time in days, she allowed herself a genuine smile. "You didn't fail tonight," she said gently, "and you don't have to let the past define what happens next. Show up every day, and that will speak louder than anything else." He nodded solemnly, absorbing her words. The empire he had built, the accolades he had earned, the respect he had commanded, it all felt insignificant compared to the fragile life in his arms. Alexander realized that power without love was meaningless, influence without care hollow. For Sophia, the greatest gift he could offer was not wealth or protection from afar, but the simple, unwavering act of presence. Later that night, as Clara prepared to leave the nursery, Alexander spoke quietly. "Thank you," he said, "for everything. For staying, for watching over her, for helping me understand what really matters." Clara paused at the doorway, her expression gentle yet serious. "Just don't forget," she said softly. "She needs both of us, not just now but always, and she'll remember who stood by her when it counted." Alexander watched her go, the quiet of the nursery settling around him. He held Sophia close, feeling the tiny pulse of her heartbeat, the fragile warmth of her skin. In that stillness, he made a silent vow. He would not let his mistakes define his relationship with her. He would be her father, fully and unreservedly, and he would earn the trust Clara had so carefully safeguarded. For the first time in years, Alexander Grant felt whole, not through power, nor wealth, nor control, but through love, presence, and the responsibility he could no longer run from. Weeks passed, and the nursery had transformed from a place of fear and tension into a space filled with quiet laughter, soft lullabies, and the rhythmic hum of calm. Alexander had found his rhythm as a father, though it was never perfect. There were moments of doubt, nights when Sophia cried inconsolably, and days when his old habits of work and distance tempted him to retreat. But each time, Clara's presence reminded him of the vow he had made, to be here, fully, without excuses. One evening, Alexander sat on the floor beside Sophia's crib, her tiny fingers curling around his thumb as she drifted to sleep. The glow from the bedside lamp cast gentle shadows across the room. Clara entered quietly, carrying a small basket of laundry, but paused at the sight before her. Alexander's eyes were soft, attentive, and filled with a patience she had rarely seen in him before. "She's asleep," Clara whispered, but there was no judgment in her tone. Instead, it carried relief and a quiet pride. "And you're really here?" Alexander looked up at her, a small, grateful smile forming on his lips. "I am," he said simply. "Every day, every moment I can be." He tilted his head, watching Sophia's chest rise and fall with peaceful steadiness. "I've realized that being a father isn't about grand gestures or perfection. It's about being present. It's about showing her that she is the most important part of my world every single day." Clara stepped closer, her eyes reflecting the soft light. "And she will feel that," she said. "You've already begun to make up for the time you lost. The rest will come with consistency, with love." Alexander nodded, letting her words sink in. He had spent so long believing that success was measured in wealth, in influence, in the power to control outcomes. But now he understood that true success was measured in love, steady, patient, unwavering love. And in this small, fragile life, he had found his most important achievement. Sophia stirred in her sleep and let out a small, contented sigh. Alexander leaned closer, brushing a stray lock of hair from her forehead. He felt a warmth spread through him, a sense of completion he had never known in the sterile boardrooms or luxurious penthouses. Here, in this quiet nursery, he was not a tycoon or a leader. He was simply a father. And that was enough. Clara watched him for a long moment, then gave a small nod, as if acknowledging the transformation she had witnessed. "You've come a long way, sir," she said softly, "and she's lucky to have you finally here." Alexander exhaled, a weight lifting from his chest that he had carried for years. "We're both lucky," he admitted. I've been given a second chance to be the father I should have been, and I won't waste it." As the night deepened, the three of them remained in the nursery, a fragile family forged not by circumstance or obligation, but by love, presence, and the courage to face fear and failure together. Alexander knew there would be challenges ahead, moments of doubt and struggle, but he also knew he would never leave Sophia's side again. For the first time in his life, Alexander Grant understood that some victories were far more precious than any empire, any fortune or any acclaim. The greatest triumph was love, steady, patient, unwavering, and he would guard it with every fiber of his being. And as Sophia slept peacefully, Alexander finally allowed himself to believe that he had found his place, not as a distant provider, but as a father, truly present and wholly devoted. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more emotional, dramatic, and unexpected tales. And let us know in the comments where in the world are you watching from. We love hearing from all of you. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and keep watching.